Hello, my name is Ann Purvis, and I am helping to organize and run the Strickland TFN Nature Club. We have been running for 9 weeks now, and every week we issue a challenge to the participants to have an adventure in nature. So this slide compilation is contributions that our participants are making, drawings, photos, accounts of interesting adventures they've had in nature this past week. We have an artist who is guiding us in learning how to draw from nature, and last week we did drawings of the silvery blue butterfly, which is very abundant right now. This is by Amara. This is by Anne, myself, and I have to say, I really enjoyed completing this project and paying attention to the detail. I was quite astonished how much more detail I saw when I tried to actually draw something from nature. Two of our participants, Karina and Sebastian, love to visit the Leslie Street Spit and watch the barn swallows. The barn swallows have long tails and an orange-colored throat and breast, which makes them easy to identify. They build this nest out of mud. We see them coming and going with clumps of mud in their beaks. This was another picture that Karina took. We call this the condominium because of multiple nests on top of each other, all inhabited at the same time. In the nest on the right, we could see the juveniles peeking out over the top. We speculated as we looked at these photos why it is that barn swallows would not build this type of nest under the eaves of our homes here in East York or somewhere else in Toronto. Various suggestions were made that perhaps they'd be vulnerable to red-tailed hawks or something like that. My suggestion was that they are aerial insectivores, and they need a huge number of mosquitoes and airborne insects to hunt at dusk. We do not want our backyards to be low-lying and marshy to produce enough insects to feed a family of barn swallows. So our lifestyle isn't really compatible. And that is why it's very important for us to fight for green spaces like the Leslie Street Spit to be preserved, in order that this very specialized habitats that some of our fellow creatures need are available to them. Karina and Sebastian also sent in this picture of vermicomposting, which is really awesome. They got these red worms from a friend, and we're feeding it with, it looks like banana peels and maybe some other lettuce and some other food scraps. And the worms are very efficiently turning that food into soil. And I imagine that's extremely rich soil and would really help potted plants greatly. This is a video sent in by Sandra and Alexi, and they watched this common eastern bumblebee feeding on Virginia waterleaf. So Virginia waterleaf is a pretty common forest floor plant. It has tubular purple flower and is found in many of our ravines and parks. It's not a plant that people would look at and say, gee, I wish I had that in my garden, and take it, and so the ravines and parks get depleted. It seems to be a wildflower that's withstood a lot of human intervention in our parks and ravines, and it's very, very good for bees. Bees love it. This is an egg found by Marina and Sonia. They thought it might be a red-winged blackbird egg. I checked in an egg book, a book about eggs, and thought it looked more like an American crow egg just by the size and by the speckled pattern on it. I guess none of us are authorities on eggs, so we're not quite sure, and it's a very big mystery how it got into the water because they found it in a pond, Sonia said. This is a tree also photographed by Marina and Sonia, pileated woodpecker drillings. We can see how devastating they can be to a standing dead tree. Marina and Sonia also photographed this lovely pumpkin seed sunfish. and this six-spotted tiger beetle. And I would like to say that one of the best places to search for the names of creatures that you see in the Parks and Ravines of Toronto is Ken Sproul's site, torontowildlife.com. It is an excellent source of, it's very well laid out, it's very easy to search, and it's very easy to match what you found with what is out there. So our challenge for this week actually was to find tracks and traces of mammals in our environment. We haven't talked much about mammals. Mammals are creatures that feed their babies milk. Their bodies have fur and big ears, big outer ears. Most creatures just have skin covering over the hole in their skull where the ear is. But mammals have this big outer ear which collects sound waves and directs them into the inner ear. Avery told an amazing story of being out jogging with her mother when this bat landed on her running shoe. They managed to get home with the bat on the running shoe and called a wildlife service to find out what to do about the bat, how to get it safely back into the environment where it could survive and flourish. They were told that bats do not launch from the ground, so they would need to wait until dusk and then climb, get as high up in the forest as they could. So find a tree where they could get up fairly high and attach, allow the bat to crawl onto the bark of the tree and launch from there. Avery and her mom Julie said that the bat did launch that night, and they didn't see it again after that. It is in these pictures. It's in the box that they kept it in until dusk. So this is a picture of a footprint that Therese and Florence found in a planter in their backyard. This footprint we can see has 5 toes, which is typical for weasels. It's typical for raccoons too, but a raccoon footprint doesn't show the separation from the toes and the ball of the foot like this. This is very classic for a weasel print. All weasels have 5 toes. Cats and dogs are both 4-toed, and of course dogs have the nail prints as well as the toe print. And cats usually have the 4 toes that have retracted claws. So this is quite certainly a weasel print, and it appears to be the right size for a skunk. Her mom, Florence, also said that they noticed drillings in their grass. And skunks will do this, searching for beetle grubs. They will dig with their snouts and leave little holes all over the grass, which is excellent for the grass. It aerates the grass, but it also removes a lot of the beetle grubs which eat the roots of the grass. So Daria and her mom were out and found cuttings by beaver on pieces of wood, which is photographed here on the right. And Daria drew this wonderful piece of art on the left of a beaver lodge, some beaver swimming in the water on a sunny day. So Anne and Jim were camping on their conservation property that they manage in the country on the weekend, and when they opened the Coleman stove, found that a little house mouse had made a nest in the Coleman stove out of shreds of paper and moss. And we know this is a house mouse because of the big ears and big feet. She was not keen to leave her little nest. She did not have babies yet, but she was very slow to leave and didn't run away particularly fast. So a vole, on the other hand, has very tiny ears and is kind of flat and big, so quite different looking from this little house mouse. So something else that Anne and Jim experienced camping at their property was to be wakened up in the middle of the night by this sound. Pretty terrifying to be waking up in the middle of the night to that sound. It sounded like a whole pack of wolves were surrounding our tent. The sound was coming from about 10 meters away and did wake us up out of a dead sleep. But the coyote call sounds like there's multiple animals calling, but they're actually solitary animals. The male and the female do stick together to raise the young and to feed the young, but the young are independent by the autumn of the year that they're born in. So we went searching for the den the next day and found it up on the meadow. This is the pile of dirt in front of the opening that the coyote had dug, and footprints in the sand. I didn't want to get any closer than this because I got very close to a coyote den once before and heard them growling inside. They weren't happy that I was that close. Another experience we had on our property was visiting in the winter and seeing the gnaw marks of the porcupine. The porcupine had removed all of the bark to get at the cambium layer of this bur oak tree. It is quite common that we see gnaw marks of various animals in nature, and that is a sign that they are around there. We came that spring and to visit our property, and we found the porcupine dead under a white pine tree, not this bur oak, but a white pine tree where it had also nipped off all of the twigs at the ends of the long branches. And I realized that we felt sorry for him because it seemed like such a long, hard winter to go through to get that kind of food that wouldn't really be giving him a lot of food value. And then, for example, nipping off the twigs and then climbing down the tree trunk and trying to find them in the snow and eat them. Like, we really wondered whether the energy balance would have really paid off at all. And then in the spring to be probably attacked by a coyote as he clambered back down the tree trunk backwards. However, his skull was of great interest to me because if I had found this skull just in the wild, I would have assumed it was a beaver skull. I just known from childhood that beaver have these big long orange teeth and the flat teeth for gnawing the wood that they actually to get food value out of it. However, it turns out that all rodents have these long orange teeth: mice, rats, beaver, muskrats, all of them. So this is a very typical rodent skull. So another mammal that we encountered this week at our home in Toronto was the opossum. My daughter was sitting out in the driveway and this strange creature ran down the driveway with this long rat-like tail. Opossums have become common in southern Ontario with the warmer climate. They're a most interesting creature. They can hang, baby opossums can actually, it's a prehensile tail, so baby opossums can actually hang from a tree with that tail. Also, they have opposable thumbs, so very few other creatures besides primates have that, but opossums do, which means that they're excellent climbers. Opossums are famous for playing dead. We've heard that expression over the years, playing possum. They can actually pretend they're dead for up to 6 hours, and they lie there with their teeth showing and foam coming out of their mouth, which makes them look sick, so that no other creature would actually dare to eat them. They also give off a smell of decaying flesh, which makes it seem like they've been dead for quite a while. So opossums are omnivores, so they eat pretty much anything, and they actually can create a den pretty well anywhere, under a brush pile or under a garage. And of course, when I knew that one had been in our driveway, I was pretty curious about whether it had found a place to nest in our yard somewhere. The other thing that is really interesting about opossums is that they're the only marsupial outside of Australia in this part of the world. So they give birth to their young when they're about 10 days, and they're about the size of a dime. 10 days gestation, so 10 days after conception. They're about the size of a dime, and the female carries them around in a pouch like a kangaroo carries a joey. They carry them in a pouch, and they crawl up and nurse for 2 months. They never leave the pouch. Once they do leave, they can be carried around on the back of the mother sometimes. So they're quite a shy creature and really quite harmless. One of the things that we want to focus on doing is to create habitat for our fellow creatures. It enriches our lives incredibly to have all these mammals, all these birds and insects, butterflies and bees living here and sharing the city with us. And the way that we can support them is by creating habitats. The rehabilitation of this garden to be a pollinator garden has been funded by the City of Toronto. And I'm just going to give you a view of this. This is at the Church of the Resurrection, 1100 Woodbine Avenue. So this is what it looks like.
You got a co-op placement there.
So two of our members, Bryn and Tora, helped one day to actually plant some of the plants in our pollinator garden. So each of the raised beds in the garden has a theme and is planted according to how much sun it gets. So one long garden gets long hours of very hot sun. So we call that our prairie garden, and it has tall grass prairie species growing in there. Some of the other gardens have quite a bit of sun too, and have cardinal flower and blazing star, and others of our other gardens have less sun. One garden is basically under a red oak tree, and so is in the shade most of the time, and we call it our forest floor garden. So two of our members, Bryn and Tora, helped to plant one day, and this is a movie of them planting. We're so grateful for the help, and under the COVID conditions, we can't have a big group there, or we can't have big groups at all, so it was really wonderful to get their help planting various plants that we obtained from Native Plants of Claremont, and these plants we'll be guarding and looking after and watering, and it will take probably until next year for them to really flourish as perennials, but yeah.
Tulips in the fall if you put it around. Okay. Because the squirrels are just notorious for digging up tulip bulbs.
We have friends who have chickens. We should see if we can collect their poop.
Well, I'm sure it's a source of revenue for farmers.
How does that look, George? Maybe a little deeper?
It looks awfully neat and tidy. It looks to me like maybe it's been
like dried or something.
Yeah, it's been kind of processed.
How does that look? Yeah, that looks pretty good.
Yeah, that's right. And then we can just, you want it,
Even if it looks too heavy.
it's COVID business.
Everything's sanitized now.
So silly. Anyways, okay, so you grab, I just put the hand sanitizer on there, just push that forward, and that should, if you push that little lever forward, it should be right there. Oh, well, yeah, I get that.
There we go.
And then, yeah, that's perfect. And then we'll grab some chicken.
Got this much?
Yeah, that's good. You don't want to actually overdo it, and this soil's pretty rich too, so. Plant in.
One down.
A couple more down.
Thanks. I would never have separated it, like loosened it up like you did when you took it out of the pot. I would have been
Wait.
too scared.
How do I
You
get
know,
this out?
just pinch the pot a little bit, and it should loosen it up.
Alright.
Well, I know. I think people are sometimes a little nervous about stuff, but
Yeah.
we actually planted once with Alex Carney's boss,
Oh, cool.
a member of the Toronto Field Naturalists, and if there's anybody in Toronto that knows how to plant stuff, and we were planting over at Tugbourne Mills, and we spent specimens that we were planting had been sitting around all summer, so they had terrible pot. You know, they were just, the roots were running around in a circle
Oh,
like
I
this.
see.
And he just pulled out a knife and started slashing the roots. And
Really?
we're like, what? Can this seriously survive? And then actually what you want to do also, Brenna didn't mention, is you want to kind of tamp it down so that it's kind of, just kind of, yeah, that's great. Great.
The problem is that I already had, like, when we were going to get the pond water, I got these shoes covered with mud. Like, I literally partially sank into mud. So.
I wasn't joking when I said we got stuck in the mud that day.
So we started on this adventure of nativizing our own backyard garden a number of years ago, and actually brought plants from our wilderness property in Northumberland County, Virginia creeper, wild grapes, which now line the one wall of our garden. And last summer we found this amazing caterpillar on the left, the white one, with the orange hump on its rear end, and it turned out to be an Abbott sphinx moth caterpillar. So I thought it would be so interesting to bring it inside, and I looked up about what to feed it, and then one day I went in and it had shed this beautiful white skin and had turned, the orange dot had disappeared, and it had turned out to have this marvelous coat, brown striped coat, and this shiny reflective eye, which looks a lot like a mammal eye and is considered to be something that it defends itself. At the end of the season, it drops into the ground, buries itself, and forms a cocoon. So it actually came out this spring one day, and I saw it emerging. So this is a case of where we have been able to plant native species and encourage a native insect to use our garden. So this is the idea behind planting native species, that we can encourage, especially where the larva feeds on the plants. Then you're really, well, in any case, insects have a much easier time collecting pollen and nectar from plants that they have evolved with and that they're used to dealing with. So this week we aren't doing art. Normally we do an art segment, as you can see from the amazing drawings that people have done. So I thought that, because Sandra wasn't able to join us, but I thought I would just walk you through some of the programs that are out there that allow us to easily identify and record what we're seeing, keep records of what we're seeing, and actually share that information with other people who are putting together data from all over the place to try to figure out what is the state of Ontario's species at the moment. So this is Inaturalist. It's free to join, and once you join, you have the opportunity to post photos. This is my site that I'm showing you. You post a photo like this. You post where and when you saw it, and then experts from all over the world will look at your photos and help you to identify what they are. So if two people are in agreement on what a photo is, then it will be bumped up to research grade. So this is an excellent, a lot of people are using Inaturalist and many atlases. So people who are trying to determine where reptiles are and where amphibians are and so on are using Inaturalist now, because it's just being so extensively used by people. So another program it's possible to use is Ebird, and you can keep your own list privately on your own computer, but it's so handy when you come back from a birding expedition to just go to your Ebird, and right here in the menu bar you can push submit, and it gives you the option to punch in the location. So most of the time you're going to be birding in places where you've done lots of birding before. So for example, if I was birding at, we've mentioned Leslie Street Spit, and that's definitely one of my favorite places. So if I push that, and then I push continue, so that logs that, Then I say what day I went. So for whatever, I'll punch in the date, and it asks me how long was I there. So I could just punch in 10th. There we go. Was I traveling or stationary? Let's say I was traveling. I was there from 2 p.m. For 2 hours. Let's say that. So I was there from 2 to 4. Let's say I went 2 kilometers. You like that? So you just punch that in, simple pimple. And then party size. Okay, I'm usually there with my husband Jim. So there we go. Let's say that. And then we just push continue. So very simple. Oh, AM, PM. Okay, I've got to punch that in. I missed something. Put AM. Oh, no, that doesn't make sense. PM. Okay, there we go. And then I punch continue. And it gives me a list here of all the possible birds that I might possibly have seen. And I just start going down the list and putting in how many I saw. If I saw 10 geese and I saw 10 Canada geese and I saw 2 mute swans, then I just assemble it. And you will be amazed when you do this how many birds you've actually seen. You think, because it asks you about all the ordinary birds as well, American robins and red-winged blackbirds and things that you think, oh, that's not even I'm not going to put that on my list. But by the time you get all those common birds on and the herring gull and everything, sometimes your list is up to 30 before you know it. So then you just punch submit down here. You say, yes, I did my best. That's all they're asking, and then submit. And then you can assemble. So I've seen only 151 species in my entire life. I've never really birded very much outside of Ontario, although I hope to bird more in Saskatchewan. So the third site that I wanted to show you is Toronto Wildlife, and I mentioned this already. This is put together by a wonderful wildlife photographer named Ken Sproul, who is a member of the Toronto Field Naturalists, and he's very strongly associated now with the Moth Project in High Park, so he does a lot of the photography for them. But if you found it, so today we featured a sunfish found by Marina and Sonia. If you want to know the name of that fish, then Ken has this all organized in groups that are very easy to find. So you just look for fish. Okay, reptiles, amphibians, and fish. You go to this, and then he has it split down even further. So go to fish. He's got 12 species here, Chinook salmon, and on and on. And then I went down here, and there it is. That's the very species that the sunfish that Marina took a picture of. And so that was how I identified that. And I just find this a wonderful site. I think that we can learn a ton from sort of walking in Ken's footsteps through the Toronto ravines. So, all right, so thanks very much. Please use these resources. They are so amazing.